conflict is never easy and rarely desired. The death of Moses signaled the end of the wandering years for the nation of Israel. 40 years earlier, when they were at the Promised Land, they failed to go in. And because of their lack of faith, they were disciplined by having an entire generation die off in the wilderness. But now, with Joshua as their new leader, they are ready to move forward. But just as was the case 40 years earlier, the Promised Land is inhabited by people that quite like living there. They're enjoying the fat of the land and the wealth that's around them. They're not going to leave simply because the God of Israel says so. They have built up cities and fortified them well. The battle is just about to begin. Joshua was Israel's new leader. He had been hand-picked by God for this position. Previously, he had served as Moses' personal aide. He had been victorious in battle. Years earlier, he was one of the ones who went in to check out the land, and he tried to encourage the people to go in and to take what God had given them. This allowed him to be one of only 2 people that actually survived from his entire generation. But beyond all these accomplishments, Joshua had one more thing going for him. God was on his side. No man will be able to stand before you all the days of your life. Just as I have been with Moses, I will be with you. I will not fail you or forsake you. God had made his personal, intimate, real presence available to his people from the very beginning. But it seems that this is what his people fought against the most. Deep in their hearts, there was an independent streak just wanting to be lived out. It's that independent streak that most often got them into trouble. Truthfully, it's that independent streak in us that usually gets us into trouble with God as well. But Joshua could be strong and courageous because of the very presence of God. When it was time to go into the Promised Land, Joshua knew he wasn't doing that on his own, but rather it would be in the wisdom and strength of the Lord. Reconnaissance missions are carried out in advance of an offensive. They help the commander know about the strength of the enemy. While they're doing the mission, they're looking for information about where the enemy is gathered and maybe a path of least resistance. How can they more effectively take down their goal? Well, the recon mission into Jericho did all those things, but it did something more. It provided some information about the incredible fame of God. God's reputation had preceded him. The people in the land had heard about what God had done among his people. They had heard how he had parted the Red Sea. They had heard how he completely destroyed the Amorites. And now, even before Israel's army was gathered and ready to fight, God had put fear in the heart of the enemy. It's time for battle. Now, Joshua was an experienced military leader. He previously had led Israel on successful military campaign. And ever since he was tapped to lead God's people into the Promised Land, he must have been thinking about how he was going to do that. What would be the approach? What kind of strategy he would use? How would he use his forces? And then enter God's plan. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "See, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its kings and its fighting men. March around the city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times with the priests blowing the trumpets. When you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets, have the whole army give a loud shout. Then the wall of the city will collapse and the army will go up, everyone straight in." There's a lesson here for us. We don't understand God's ways. Now, we would all admit that we don't understand what God does, and we certainly don't understand why God does things. But we also have to recognize that we don't understand how God does things as well. You see, God is not just a God of the big picture. He's also the God of the details. "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." It wasn't enough for Joshua to know that he was going to be victorious. He needed to know how to do it. As the conquest of the Promised Land begins, Joshua and his troops are given the instructions to completely destroy everything in their path. Later, God would tell his people the same thing when he told them to drive out completely the inhabitants of the land. Both of these instructions were aimed at the same purpose: remove foreign influences from your life. It would be Israel's failure to do this that would cause them trouble for all of their lives. God wanted their complete, undivided loyalty. It would take total allegiance to God to survive in this new land. And Israel's failure to be completely devoted to God would cause them trouble forever. For if you ever go back and cling to the rest of these nations, these which remain among you, and intermarry with them, so that you associate with them and they with you, know with certainty that the Lord your God will not continue to drive these nations out from before you, but they shall be a snare and a trap to you, and a whip on your sides and thorns in your eyes, until you perish from off this good land which the Lord your God has given you. Joshua had successfully brought his people into the promised land. They had defeated their enemies and now would enjoy a period of rest. Joshua uses his final days to remind his people of what was before them. Now therefore fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. And if it is disagreeable in your sight to serve the Lord, choose for yourselves today whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served, which were beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you are living. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Joshua told the people it was time to make a choice. Stop wavering. Get off the fence. Quit going back and forth. God wanted them to choose him, but he was not willing to be shared. It needed to be all or nothing. The same is true for us. God is not interested in some casual take him or leave him relationship. He wants a committed, connected, exclusive relationship between us. It's a choice you have to make, but the choice is yours. The next time we get together, we'll see what choice Israel makes. The next time you and God get together, you'll know what choice you made.